The universe. It's so big, it has people in it. And those people eventually became so smart, they made a monkey.
Okay.
And because of that monkey, there are so many nerds on the internet currently having an aneurysm over the fictional timeline of what's supposed to be a family game. And I'm one of them, because why the fuck? Good old Nintendo. Everybody loves Nintendo nowadays, right? No? Well, they did, and I still do. They've introduced us to hundreds of thousands of not just games, but entire worlds to explore. They brought back the video game industry the same way they keep bringing back Krillin from Dragon Ball Z, and they made it even better with the release of Super Mario Bros., which spawned the biggest gaming franchise in the entire world. But what I find strange about Mario is that with all of its fame and glory, people often forget that Mario is simply just a spin-off. Without that famous silverback gorilla, or at least I think he's silverback, I don't know what type of gorilla Donkey Kong really is, but regardless, without him, our favorite Italian plumber would have probably stayed in the back of Miyamoto's mind for however long, along with whatever other cartoon mascots he came up with back in the day.
Hey, y'all come look at this.
But it wasn't even just Mario, because the Donkey Kong franchise has spawned a number of different games, series across multiple different eras, platforms, and developers that I like to call the Mario Extended Universe. Or, the Donkey Kong Extended Universe, because I guess it would make more sense because Donkey Kong did come first, but Mario is the bigger franchise and most people already recognize Donkey Kong as a Mario character anyway. One of these days a DK fan is going to tear me limb for limb. But yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about here. And no, I won't be including Smash Brothers because, Smash Brothers I feel like is kind of cheating because, every game is in Smash Brothers now. Maybe some other time though. Now, see, the history between Mario and Donkey Kong is pretty cut and dry. They debuted in the same game. Donkey Kong was Mario's Bluto to his Popeye, and Pauline was, olive oil. One thing I find interesting about the Donkey Kong games, the early Donkey Kong games, is the construction site setting. It's pretty evident that Mario and Luigi before they were plumbers, were construction workers, and this is supported by the release of Wrecking Crew in 1985. So logically, you can conclude that these two games take place around the same week or something. Some might argue that it isn't the case because, Mario's roles in this game are pretty different. In Donkey Kong, Mario's a carpenter, and in Wrecking Crew, Mario, he's working in demolition. The thing people overlook is that carpentry often involves demolition, especially when it comes to homes and commercial spaces. But that's not really Mario's origin. If we go back way further, we get to the Yoshi games, which is, in my opinion, the canonical beginning of the entire franchise. Mario's backstory has always had something to do with Brooklyn or New Donk City, and I always screw up with the Brooklyn story, from the cartoon and all that, but then Odyssey sort of came around with the retcon, and that created New Donk City, but we all kind of liked the retcon, but then the movie brought us back to Brooklyn, so I don't know what the heck is going on. But for the sake of this video, I want to use New Donk City because it kind of makes more sense than, a portal to a different world type of story, an isekai, if you will. So obviously we're going to start with this fraud of a Sork who put in zero effort in protecting the babies, alright? Failed his job, and Yoshi had to step in and fight baby Bowser. The 7 star children are Mario, Luigi, Peach, Donkey Kong, Wario, Bowser, and Yoshi respectively. They were born with incredible power, apparently enough power to conquer the universe. Or something like that, I don't know, they just pull stuff out of their asses when they write Mario games. My theory is that Kamek and I guess baby Bowser wanted to use the power of all the star children for themselves to take over the universe, I guess. After being absolutely humiliated by these Yoshis, Bowser and Kamek decided, forget about these babies for a second. Let's just straight up commit freaking genocide, which is where the Yoshi games come in. Yoshi's Story, Woolly World, Crafted World, that's where these games come in. After Mario and Luigi were returned to their parents, they decided, I don't really want to live in a place where my son can get taken by whatever the heck this thing is at any time of the day, so They packed up their things and moved to New Donk City, which is where the Mario Brothers would grow up. But what about Donkey Kong? Well, personally, I could never get past the idea that Donkey Kong in the arcade game is actually Cranky Kong. I mean, that just never made enough sense to me, because why did one age to be like 95 and the other one still in their late 20s? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Mario and DK are supposed to be long life rivals, you know. We saw DK as one of the babies that Kamek stole in Yoshi's Island for the DS, so if we go by that logic, wouldn't it make more sense for that to be the Donkey Kong that Mario fought in the arcade game? Like, am I the only one? Am I alone here? I'm going with that. I think I want to go with that story for. So yeah, Mario and Donkey Kong, you know, they grew up with each other, and you know, Pauline was there too. They were all chill at one point. You know, they were friends, but for some reason, Donkey Kong's animalistic instincts kicked in, and he just snapped. You know, that led to him stealing Pauline and terrorizing the construction site that they all worked at. So Mario had to defeat him and then lock him up. This explains the plot of Donkey Kong 2, you know, he didn't want to restrain him out of malice, but he did it in order to keep Pauline and New Donk City safe. After he got loose, however, DK went even more insane, and Mario had to call on his help of his cousin, Stanley the Bugman. When DK finally loses that fight, he finally comes to his senses and realizes that he needs some time to reflect inward on his past actions. Or something, I don't know, it's dumb. So he moves back to DK Island to live with his family for a while, which is where the Donkey Kong Country saga begins. More on that later though. Now, fed up with their carpentry job, Mario and Luigi quit. Alright, that whole fiasco with Donkey Kong was the last straw. So they go and to start their own plumbing business instead, which leads to them exploring some pipes.
Pause.
Dude, it's a metaphor.
Strange looking pipes with walking talking turtles coming out of them. No, I don't mean those turtles, I mean these ones, yeah, these ones. After they beat those turtles though, they go to investigate where they come from. And that's how we go from Mario Bros to Super Mario Bros. They investigate a strange looking pipe which leads them to the Mushroom Kingdom, which is interconnected with New Donk City. And I'm sure we all know where that story goes, you know, Mario and Bowser, their conflict started and just never ended from there. But whatever happened to the Yoshis though? Well, my theory is that at some point Bowser won against the Yoshis and it led to them becoming near extinct. This is why in Mario games they are so few in numbers and can only appear in certain Mario levels. But with the help of Yoshi, Mario beats Bowser once again. But he doesn't just beat him in a regular fashion, he blasts him all the way up to the freaking stars. Look at him blasting away like Team Rocket, he's got somewhere to be. But do keep this in mind because it'll be important later. Now, the Mushroom Kingdom was in peace for a while, you know, Mario had time to do leisure activities such as painting. But what happened to Donkey Kong? Well, last we saw him, he was on a self-reflection journey after being defeated by both Mario and Stanley. He needed to go spend some time with his family, right?
Monkey doesn't wear any pants.
And what happens to their banana horde while he's spending time with his family? They get stolen.
What's wrong with you, bro? What the heck? You tripping, bro? You
Stolen by the Crumbs and their leader, King K. Rool. This forces DK to finally become the hero he was always meant to be, along with his best friend, Diddy Kong.
That's why he's hitting me!
However, this one conflict started an entire race war. War, terrorism, piracy, kidnapping, torture, enslavement, every war crime in the book was committed on this island that looks strangely like DK's head. I don't know what type of narcissism was going on there, but the Kongs weren't completely alone. They had lots of allies located on the island, such as the population of bears located in the northern region. They were called the Brothers Bears. All the male bears in this family had a letter starting with B in their name. You know, Bazooka, Barnaby, Blizzard. Sound familiar? Sooner or later though, the Kongs would win the battle and become known as heroes throughout Congo Bongo. Meanwhile, Mario would continue living in peace, but those days were numbered. Because remember when I said Bowser got blasted into space? Well, what was he doing in space? He was conspiring with evil aliens. Realizing he can't go back to the Mushroom Kingdom unprepared, he formed an alliance. This alliance included Tatanga and Wizpig. Both these aliens were looking for territory to conquer, and with Bowser's help, they were going to get that, but Bowser only gave him those coordinates in exchange for powerful technology that would later allow him to create pocket dimensions. He promised them both that they'd pretty much be easy to conquer, you know, they would have zero resistance, they'd be in and they'd be out. But what Bowser didn't tell them is that he was only using them as distractions to go forth with his plan of capturing the Peach's castle. So Tatanga invades Sarasaland and captures Princess Daisy, and Wizpig goes to Timber's Island. This creates the events of Super Mario Land and also Diddy Kong Racing. The escapades in Mario Land were simply a distraction for Bowser to use so he could seize the Princess Castle. This would become even more complicated with Wario getting involved into the mix with the Mario Land sequels. Meanwhile, on Timber Island, Timber couldn't handle this threat alone. He calls on Diddy Kong's help, and he himself seeks out one of the brothers bears for help, but he doesn't just want any of them, he wants the strongest one they ever had. The only problem is the strongest brother bear there ever was exiled years ago for being too lazy. So before Diddy goes to help Timber, he needs to go to a place called Spiral Mountain. But nobody knows where that is, except for one certain red squirrel. Conker the squirrel. What was Conker doing? To be honest, I don't know. We can say that he was like a information broker or something. I don't know. Let's go with that. So yeah, he helps them go to Spiral Mountain, and then they both team up with Banjo, and then they all go and head to Timber's Island to help, which for some reason involves racing. I don't know why did Diddy Kong Racing even have a plot? I don't understand. But yeah, both Tatanga and Wizpig are getting absolutely humbled by Mario and Diddy Kong, even after being promised those territories would be easy targets. As they are defeated, they realize that Bowser was just playing them all along, and with nobody in his way, Bowser goes to seize the technology he was seeking. But he couldn't just use this technology right out of the gate. He needed help from a very skilled magic user to help control and stabilize this foreign power source that he would later use for battle. Enter Gruntilda, the evil witch, an old friend of Chemix from back in the day when they studied at the same dark art school. In exchange for helping Bowser, Gruntilda was allowed to keep fragments of the technology herself as payment. This would later lead to the invention of the 3D transfer machine. But what about Conker? Well, that's where things get a bit dark. You see, after experiencing the trauma of almost seeing his friends nearly die from Wizpig, Conker realizes that the world is a chaotic and cruel place. So he goes to the bar to drink away his memories of the Great Alien War, leading directly into his very own Bad Fur Day.